All right. In this video, I want to encourage you to know that Jesus is coming very soon, and I'm starting to think it's imminent. I used to think he would be coming on some kind of feast day, or even on the day that he ascended himself, that he would also take us up on that same day. And maybe he will, but I'm starting to lean towards imminence, that it could just happen at any time. And it was weird because just a few days ago I was thinking, you know what, it might be another year or two, and then Jesus is gonna come get us. But then all of a sudden I stumbled across this guy, and I can't remember his YouTube channel name, so I will try to remember to put it into the info box. If I forget, please comment, say something, and I'll put the link to the guy's channel in there. And this guy is preaching the end times, that it's soon, that all this stuff is going to happen, and he actually uses economics and stuff going on in the world showing that the stage is set, and it really encouraged me that, hey, Jesus could come right now. Yeah, that was the impression I was getting of, like, hey, this is end time stuff. This is going to change the world. Jesus is going to come get me right now. That's how I was starting to feel. And I wanted to make a Rapture video when I was listening to the guy, and then I ended up coming across the video today, uh, which is going to be the main topic of what I'm going to get into. But before I do, I want to tell you a little bit more about this guy and what he's saying in his videos. He was talking about economics and the US dollar, and he was talking about how it's fiat currency, as in it doesn't really have anything backing it up, except in a sense it's backed by oil because it is used as the currency of exchange for oil. So if any other nation, country wants to get oil, they first need to get US dollars, and then they can get oil. So in the sense, it's backed by oil. That's why I thought it was weird when you get a lot of these people who want to go green. You know, it's like, do you not realize that if you did that, you would destroy the value of the US dollar, and all the money that you have and that saved up would be worthless, that you would cause an economic collapse? And they're just kind of like, and they don't want to talk to me anymore. And it's kind of like, I'm trying to help you and warn you of where you're heading with your views. But what are you going to do, right? But anyway, he was talking about how with this stimulus that was given to everybody, that it actually caused inflation. He's talking about how when you just give money out there without actually uh, working for it and producing products, what you create is a demand because people have the money, so they want products. But since you just gave the money for free and you didn't increase the supply stays the same. So everybody's trying to buy stuff up, but the supply is not increasing because there wasn't any work done for it. On top of that, because of this boogeyman that shut down the world, basically, that slowed down production as well. So production not only was the same, but dropped a bit. And then you just give people money, well, then you cause inflation because now there's the same amount of goods or less goods in this case, but more demand for it. And they can't meet the demand, so then the prices go up to give it to those who can afford it. Right? And people want more stimulus, right? And if that happens, inflation gets worse. The prices go up. The value of the dollar goes down. So you get more and more money, but it becomes more and more useless, and the prices of what you want go up. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then he was talking about countries like Russia and things that they're doing and could be doing, such as switching the exchange of oil from the US dollar to gold. Because right now, the only thing really backing up the US dollar is that it's in a sense backed by oil because it's the only exchange for oil. So if any country or nation wants oil, they got to have US dollars to get it. But if you remove that middleman, which is not really needed, and you just use something like what Russia and China want to do is something like gold, silver, and what have you, well, then the US dollar has no value. And now the economy crashes. It destroys the economy in America and it affects the world. And he was talking about how that's what people want, the people in charge anyway, because they want to destroy America. They want a power shift, and taking out the dollar would be the best way to do it. The economy is destroyed, and because of that, uh, the power of America is gone just like that. It doesn't have the money to maintain its military and its agriculture and everything, just kaput. And I was like, you know what? These things are like right around the corner, right around the corner. And the countries that are actually going to be valuable are the countries that produce food, clothing, industrial nations that have uh, that can supply, electronics and car parts, oil and gas, the different natural gases and stuff. Uh, Actually produce gold and silver through mining and lithium and all that stuff that they're using these days. Those are the ones that actually have value, and they would be able to push through things like this that are going to happen upon the world. But nations that aren't doing that crash, crash and burn. And America is in that list where we're doing less and less, such as the farmers getting paid to destroy their crops, or they're going to be taxed up the wazoo. You got people like Bill Gates buying up farmland. You got all these things going on where you can see that the stage is set not just for uh, the first two horsemen, but also for that third one, the black horse with the scales, where it brings famine. And that's what's happening. The stage is set, and when I was listening to this, I was like, "Holy crap! I gotta go outside. I think Jesus is coming. He's gonna come get us. I mean, this is happening, and it's like gonna happen tomorrow if we're all we know, right?" I used to think that the rapture would happen on some kind of feast day or on Ascension Day when Jesus ascended. I was like, yeah, that's a good time where Jesus would take us up. And he quite possibly could. But then when I'm listening to these things, I'm like, man, this could happen just at any time. Right? I'm definitely going to be looking on feast days and on Ascension Day and stuff, but heck, it could happen right now. For all we know, happen tonight. We'll get woke up by a trumpet blast or something. But anyway, when I was hearing this stuff, I was like, man, I gotta make a Rapture video. Encourage people that this is happening. It's happening soon. Might not be happening right when we think it is, but it's happening. Um, and while thinking about making one, I came across a video, which is what I want to get into here and use it to encourage you. I was watching a video not from JD Farag here, but from this guy here. Let me shrink this down. This is Nelson Walters. The artwork on his picture is a little weird, I know, but it was the best one I could find just quickly Googling his name. This guy here believes in a post-trib, pre-wrath rapture. And he was, in this video I was watching, rebuking Farag's video about the pre-tribulation rapture and how he was saying that a mid or post-trib rapture is actually satanic. And I agree and disagree. And I'll explain. With the the church, the church age ends. I'll bring it up here using the scriptures to show you. We have the church age here in Revelation chapter 2 and Revelation chapter 3. And then when we come to chapter 4, this right here is the rapture. This is the door open to the Church of Philadelphia, where they go through to escape the trial that is to come upon the whole world. Then, after the rapture, we got scenes going on in heaven. And then the seals are opened and the tribulation actually starts here with the Antichrist going forth to conquer. And then there's war, and then famine, and then here's death. The four horsemen of the apocalypse. This is what comes out with the first four seals after the rapture takes place, right? And this guy, believing in a post-trib pre-wrath, or basically a mid-tribulation rapture, or even people that believe in a post-trib rapture, it's satanic in that the church age has ended. And during this time, you're no longer saved by grace through faith. You're saved by faith and works. You need both. Right now, it's just about faith in God's work and what he did with Jesus Christ on the cross. In this time, it's not. It's about your faith and your works. So it's satanic because these people teaching that the church goes halfway through or all the way through the 7-year period is giving them a false sense of security in their salvation, that they're saved by grace through faith, so it doesn't matter what they do. Because there's even people like this, Nelson Walters, who I believe he's preaching saved by grace through faith from the videos that I was seeing. And he also preaches that the mark of the beast will genetically change you, where you're no longer human, and that's why you can't be saved. So you got to refuse the mark of the beast. Yet when you're telling people that they're saved by grace through faith, then you're sending a mixed signal. And right now, that's easy to say, oh, we're saved by grace through faith, and you just won't take the mark of the beast. Right? It's easy to say. But when you're going through this, and you're hungry, and you're cold, and you're wet, and you're burning up, and you're just not having a fun time, you start thinking about, well, I'm saved by grace through faith. It's not of myself, not of works, lest I would boast. It's a gift of God. So God understands if I take the mark. I know he doesn't want me to, but I'm saved anyway. And you start telling yourself that. I don't know if any of these people have ever been hungry. I've been hungry. I've lived on the streets for a little while. I've been hungry to the point where it was exhausting to walk. Like hyperventilating, shaking knees, have to rest every 10 steps. Can't sleep because you're just hungry. I know a bit of what it feels like. Having to eat grass, right? So it's easy when things are going fine to say, yeah, we'll just prepare and we won't have to worry about the mark of the beast. Store up food. That's what this guy talks about. The people who believe in pre-trib, they're actually causing people not to prepare. And I have two things to say to that. One is that I'm preparing, but not for me. I'm preparing for people who actually have to go through the shit, that are family and friends that didn't want to believe the gospel. There'll be stuff, educational stuff, supplies, different things to help them out. But if you're actually storing up to go through the shit that's going to hit the fan here, you're not walking by faith. You're trying to save yourself by your own works there in this time of grace. Uh, it's kind of weird, but all you're actually doing is putting a target on your back because they're going to come for you because you have the food, the water, the other supplies. These people didn't store up for it, and there's a lot more of them than there is of you. All right, so what are you going to do? Are you going to kill them? Are you going to get killed because there's more of them and they're going to rough you up? You're just going to give it over to them? You stored it up for nothing? I mean, like Mike Tyson said, everybody gets a plan until they get popped in the mouth, right? And all of a sudden, the plan goes out the window. You're not really thinking things through. It's like these people have never experienced going through some rough times. You plan for it, but you plan on everything that you've planned for going out the window. All your supplies destroyed. All your tools destroyed. All your gear destroyed. Or, just stolen, lost. You just got the clothes on your back. What are you going to do now? There's only you and a friend, or you're alone, running in the woods because they're trying to put you in a FEMA camp or lop off your head. What's your plan then? Are you really thinking this through? Because I don't think you are. But anyway, I'm going to go through some of the points this fellow was bringing up, trying to counter Farag's points. I can't say I agree 100% with Farag because I haven't watched his video. I don't know everything he's saying. But the Bible is pretty clear that the rapture is before the tribulation. All right, I'll bring this up. These people believe that right here is the start of the tribulation, and then at right around here at the sixth seal, it talks about the wrath of God. Let me see if I find that here. Oh yeah, right here it says, "Hide us from the wrath of the Lamb." Right here, right, and it says, "For the great day of His wrath is come. Who shall be able to stand?" So they're like, see, this is when the wrath of God starts. So they believe in a post-trib, pre-wrath rapture. They think that the rapture happens here, right? But I'll break that down. Don't worry about it. I've already done all that in videos, but I'll go over it again here. But I want to focus on right now on some notes I took while watching his video. He's talking about how Farag talks about the saints in Revelation, that they are tribulation saints. And he was like, no, even the church is saints. And he was like, yes, but like in the time of Israel, there were saints before the church existed. That doesn't include the church, right? When the church is raptured, it's back with Israel, such as 144,000 Jews that are sealed, and it has nothing to do with the church. So they're saints, but they're not part of the church, right? It's a different group. Kind of like you have angels and you have mankind. You can call both the sons of God, both saints, two different groups, right? They don't have to be the same thing. Two different groups of saints, two different groups of children of God. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll explain what I was going to explain later right now to explain that a bit further. We see it here at the fifth seal, martyrs, right? But these martyrs are not like Jesus Christ. They're not like Stephen. They're not like Paul, where they're like, forgive them for they know not what they do. These people are like, hey, get vengeance on these SOBs. This is not Christian. This is a different group. Because what's going on here is the separation of the wheat and the tares. With the tares, it's no longer, save them. It's like, nope, time's up, burn them. because the tares are destroying the wheat here. Not spiritually speaking, but physically, in the flesh, that's what's going on. So we can see that these people are martyrs, so we know that right here, something's going on to separate the wheat from the tares. We get an idea that the mark of the beast is coming out here. This guy who's coming to conquer has a bow but no arrows. A bow is a symbol of the covenant. The first mention of the bow is the rainbow in the sky after the flood, where God made a covenant not to destroy the world in a flood of water again. Right? This guy's making some kind of agreement, and because of this, there's martyrs. It doesn't say these people died because of the starvation, because of the famine and the death and the war. I was actually looking at the second seal on the Antichrist. I was actually meant to come up here where he has a bow. My bad. I thought I was there. But hopefully you understood what I meant. So these people are martyrs. So they are dying for their faith. So there's some kind of separation going on right here, where the world is killing Christians, killing Jews, killing believers, right? But there has to be some reason. Why are they being killed? Just because they believe in Jesus, because they believe in God? I would say this is because the mark of the beast is already being pushed out. We already see people like Elon Musk giving out a brain chip that he wants to put in people's heads, right? And then when we come over to this next chapter, where they like to say this is the rapture, this great multitude, these people say this is the rapture, a great multitude of all the nations. But they don't take into consideration they're separated from the Jews, so they have Jews and Gentiles. Right? The 144,000 is right at the beginning, and then it talks about this great multitude. And they don't make that distinction that, hey, in the church, there is no Jew or Gentile, but here there's a separation. It's because this is a different group. That's your first clue. Your second clue is that they are, where is it here? They come out of great tribulation. It says they have washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. You may be thinking, what am I talking about here? Christians don't have robes that can get dirty, that need to be cleaned. Like John says in the first chapter, our robes aren't washed in the blood of Jesus. We are washed in the blood of Jesus. And what we can read from Paul, such as in Philippians chapter 3, verses 2 through 9, is that we're clothed in God's righteousness. Just compare that with Romans chapter 4, verses 2 through 6, where we have God's righteousness imputed onto us. So we're clothed in a robe of pure righteousness that is God's righteousness. And since it's God's righteousness, it's dependent on His character, not ours. It's dependent on His perfection and sinlessness, not on our imperfect sinfulness. Right? So there's nothing we can think, say, or do, or not think, say, or do that can stain our robes that they would need to be washed. This is a different group of people. They have washed their robes in the blood of Jesus. We don't need to wash our robes. That's your big clue. They're saying this is a different group of people. He talks about the wedding feast real quick, and he acts as though that's the wedding. It's like, no, you have the wedding, then the wedding feast. Right? So, getting that mixed up, I've talked about that before in the other videos where I brought up the servants and what have you from the Gospels, the parables in the Gospels, and show you how they're not invited to be the bride, they're not invited to be married, they're invited to come to the wedding supper. So they're guests, they're not the actual bride. Another straightforward clue telling you there's two groups. There's the bride and then there's guests. Obviously, they're separate groups, right? He talked about urgency and believing in a pre-tribulation rapture. J.D. Frog was saying that breeds urgency, and he was saying you should still have that same urgency even if you don't believe in it. And I would agree, but believing that Jesus could come at any moment definitely gives you that urgency. Like, is this what I want to be thinking, saying, and doing when Jesus comes back to grab me right now? Is that really what I want? No, because he could grab me right now. That has a little bit more of a oomph than to be like, well, I know these things have to happen first, so you don't have that same oomph. Maybe you have a little more oomph to save the flesh, where you got to store up food and water and other such things, some medical supplies and what have you. But not not so much for the spiritual stuff of saving your soul and purifying yourself. But anyway, he talked about the wicked servant. If I remember where that is quoted from. I hope this doesn't short it out. Sometimes when I bring the eSword up, it shorts out my screen capture. I don't remember exactly where it is. I don't remember Matthew 24, 25. So let's just take a quick look here. All right. Thy wicked servant, but the debt, verse Matthew 25, his Lord, and said unto him, Thou wicked and slothful servant, thou knewest that I reap not sow. Yes, let's go to this one real quick. Let's bring this down. Before we do, let's take a look at the actual start of the parable here. This is the key right here. The parable is about the kingdom of heaven. The kingdom of heaven is the physical kingdom of Israel for the Jews, where Jesus sits as king in the seat on the throne of David. This doesn't have to do with the church. The church is the kingdom of God, which does not come by sight, and flesh and blood cannot inherit it. It's within you, because it's spiritual, as God is spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. Right? This is talking about the Jews under the law. That's why it talks about when he comes. When he comes for the church, he just takes us up there. Right? Our salvation has already been determined. Here, it's different. He comes and he's issuing a judgment, deciding who and who isn't saved, because it's a different group of people, right? But for some reason, he was associating this with the church. When it talks about servants, Israel is the servant. We, as Paul tells us in Galatians chapter 4, are no longer servants, but sons, right? So we have, like Jesus said, we have passed from judgment, we passed condemnation, and have gone from death to life. We've been judged according to our salvation. It's a done deal. But anyway, he talks about how in Matthew 24, the servants, not the servants, the disciples ask, what is the sign of thy coming? Right? So he associates that with the rapture for some reason. They asked when he's coming. From everything we've looked at that I've shown in other videos, I think I even got a playlist of it if you check on my channel about the rapture. I make it abundantly clear that the Bible is clear that it's a pre-tribulation rapture. And not only that, I rebuke all the arguments against it. So when you're talking about Jesus' coming, the rapture is a sign of the coming, And his actual coming is at the end when he comes and does this here. And as you can see where he talks about he separates the nations. See, a final judgment. We've passed from judgment. We're not saved by works. This is a works-based salvation. This whole chapter is talking about the kingdom of heaven. And when he comes at the end of the tribulation, at the end of the wrath of God. Right? So anyway, continue with this. I wrote something here about them falling away, so I'm trying to remember what he was talking about there. Oh, I remember what I want to say about that. Where falling away here. Now check this out. We have the rapture in chapter 4 of Revelation. And then we have the Antichrist come about. You imagine how many Christians are going to fall away when they realize that they didn't get raptured? Like we read in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, I believe it is. A lot of people try to use it to actually support a post-trib, pre-wrath rapture. But the falling away is caused by the actual rapture. The rapture causes the falling away. Because there's so many Christians who think that they're going to be saved because they call themselves Christian and they were baptized and they do good works and la 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 la. And it's all about them and the things they've done. Like, excuse me, Matthew 7. These people prophesying in his name, doing many wonderful works in his name, casting out devils and prophesying and yada yada yada. Jesus is like, I don't even know you. Right? So they think because of the things they're doing, they should have gotten salvation. That's what they actually tell Jesus when they see him. Hey, look at all the things I've done. And he's like, who are you? You did this in my name? I don't know who you are. That's rough. I would not want to be them. But anyway, so yeah, about the falling away, that's falling away here. If he wanted to say something like, let's say, oh, the Antichrist showed up and I was wrong about the rapture, that I would fall away. Why would I fall away? I was wrong. It wouldn't be the first time I was wrong about something. I'm not leaving God. If I have any choice in the matter, I'm sticking to Jesus. I don't care if I'm wrong. We're not raptured and the Antichrist shows up and all this stuff happens. Well, whether I have to just rough it and deal with the heat and the cold and starvation and whatnot, or go get my head lopped off, whatever, whichever. As long as glorifies God, he gives me the strength to do it. Okay, I'm not falling away if I have anything to say about that. And I know that I'm weak, and I'd probably pull a Peter. So that's why I'll say, my own strength, if I could, I wouldn't fall away. So I'd just be like, God, you got to keep me from falling away. Because that's the only thing that would actually keep me from doing so, right? I mean, we would all fall away if it wasn't for God and our relationship with him. So I'm pretty confident with my relationship with God that that wouldn't happen because he wouldn't let it. But yeah, just answering that in case that kind of objection would come up. I'm trying to see things from the other point of view here. But let's look at some other things on my notes here. Kind of talked about this a little bit, where he's talking about storing up so that you could feed his church, like literal food during the tribulation and what have you. And the funny thing is like I was showing from Matthew, is that this stuff has to do with the kingdom of heaven and with his brethren, which the church isn't his brethren, right? The church, you could say, is his sister, and it's his bride, but the church isn't his brethren. The brethren is his fellow Jews, the Hebrews, Israel, the 144,000 as an example. So that had to do, again, not with the church. It's a saving up and actually taking care of the Jews, like people, as an example, would have been doing in Nazi Germany. That's an example where the Antichrist, Hitler, going after the Jews, and these people were protecting them through this time and feeding them and supporting them. That's an example of this. Um, and I already mentioned about you storing up food that you just put a target on your back, right? Especially since you're already telling people what you're doing, right? But anyway, uh, this one I thought was these next two things. I was like, man, this guy is way off. He's talking about how Farag talked about Enoch as a picture of the church and Noah as a picture of basically Israel going through the church. And I've talked about that, where Enoch is the church taken before the tribulation, before anything even gets bad. Really seriously bad, right? Well, can't say really that because we don't know all the details of what's going on. But the flood didn't come yet, right? Real destruction wasn't coming. And Noah was found perfect in his generations. I think he agrees that this has to do with his genealogy, just like the 144,000 find grace because of their genealogy, 12,000 from these 12 tribes. That's a perfect fit for Noah, right? And you're saying Enoch is a completely different story, like taken up 500, 600 years before Noah. It's like, no, it's the same story. Enoch's taken, and he names his son Methuselah. When he dies, it shall come. His son's name is a prophecy of what's to come. That's the church. We're telling everybody it's coming, and then we're taken. And they're like, huh, perhaps we should have listened to what they said. But it'd probably be a lot like in the days of Noah, where they just go back to doing their own thing, and then the rain comes, right? If it wasn't for things we read in Revelation, I wouldn't think anybody got saved except for the 144,000. Yeah, where he's saying Enoch is in the same story. No, Methuselah, and the meaning of his name uh, shows you the connection that Enoch was prophesying of the coming flood, just like the church is prophesying of the tribulation. Then he was talking about the 7 years of loading the animals and talking about how that is the Christian church saving people during the 7-year tribulation. He was like, what? No. The 7 years of loading up the animals, and what else are they doing? Stocking up on food. This is the 7 years of plenty that we see in the story of Joseph. There were 7 years of plenty, and then there was a 7-year famine. The 7 years of plenty of bringing the animals in is more of a warning to everybody about, hey, there's a shitstorm coming, right? And then you have the 7 years of famine, of the tribulation. And you notice that it's not broken up into a tribulation and a wrath. It's just a 7-year period that's all considered the same thing, right? Just, because these people like to differentiate between the tribulation and wrath. And I don't mind saying that that's the tribulation here, and then all of a sudden we're going to get the wrath. But I still look at it as the same thing. They're all connected. It's the 7-year period, and the first part of it, not as bad. It's the tribulation. Then the real wrath comes down. It's the 7 years of famine in Joseph's story. And in that story, Joseph is representing Jesus, the second in the kingdom, and he brings his Gentile bride in before the famine, showing again the rapture. So this guy's ignorance, I think, has to do with two things. One, he's not really thinking about these stories and meditating upon it. And the other is a bit of ego where he doesn't think that he could be wrong. And he's wrote a book about his beliefs, so he's already got time and energy invested into this, and it's now something to help him make money. So he has to now support that because it would take a whole lot of humility to now change. He briefly mentioned something about law and the fire coming down, and he was saying that the fire doesn't come down immediately at the start of the tribulation. Well, there's a couple things to say to that. One is that the actual falling here that we see on Lot, not on Lot, but on Sodom and Gomorrah in the story of Lot, can be these fallen angels, and they're going to bring the destruction, such as this Antichrist might have something to do with that, right? Because we have Satan as the dragon who brings a third of the angels down, right? That can be a representation of that. Not only that, as I think that actually has a lot to do with the USA. Lot was a very worldly Christian, very worldly, willing to give up his daughters to be molested, raped, and who knows, maybe even killed by a mob of men. And then later on, gets drunk enough to sleep with both of his daughters to bring forth children. So, yeah, but he's considered a righteous man in the New Testament. Obviously, it's not by his life and his works that he's considered righteous. We can see this as America. American Christians are really worldly. They're a lot like Lot, and they'll be taken out, those who are born again, and then the U.S. would be destroyed. I believe that is going to happen. I think it might have something to do with Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, and believe it or not, Europe. I think it might actually come from Europe because we've already cut off the pipeline from Russia to Europe. A supposed accident, but they know it's sabotage, and it was right after Biden talked about it being destroyed. I think this guy even talked about it. So Russia is not Russia, the United States is not making any friends. I'm actually making a lot of enemies. He brings up Daniel and saying Daniel's not in the picture of the rapture, and he doesn't really touch on it. It was like, yeah, he's not there during the trial of the mark of the beast, the statue, bow down to it or die, take the mark or die. He's not there. He's not in the story. He's representing the church, the believers. He's made third in the kingdom, representing the Holy Spirit. He says he has his own trial in the lion's den. That doesn't change anything. The reason why he goes through his own trial is because he actually accepted worship from Nebuchadnezzar. After he tells Nebuchadnezzar the dream and its interpretation in Daniel chapter 2, he actually receives worship from Nebuchadnezzar, and there's nothing there saying he corrected him. So God had to show him something. And that might be why Daniel had nothing to do with what happened in Daniel chapter 3 with this mark of the beast thing going on, because Nebuchadnezzar already looked at him as a god, right? And Daniel couldn't say anything about it because he already accepted Nebuchadnezzar's worship, so how could he say anything about bowing to this statue? Right? I mean, there's a lot of things that could have been going on there. Next thing he brought up is about Frog bringing up Revelation chapter 3, and they were talking about the Greek in verse 10 here. And he said, keeping you from the hour of temptation. And he briefly went over what it means in the Greek, like trial, temptation, test. And he was like, yeah, that's the mark of the beast coming out. We have the Antichrist coming out right at the beginning. That's a temptation to follow him. And then the mark of the beast. That's the other temptation. And it even mentions it, what is it? Revelation 13? Might be 17. It's talking about the beast and yeah, I think it's in 17. It talks about the 10 horns giving power over to the beast for an hour, right? So there is the hour of temptation, right? They're kept from what's going on. Um, and that would have to deal with the Antichrist and the mark of the beast. Uh, as you can see, this comes upon the whole world, and this door is open to him. And in the very start of chapter 4, we see that door opened, and it's in heaven. Then he talks about Paul real quick and connects it to Daniel's 70th week. And his argument was Daniel never mentioned that they're going to be raptured to escape Daniel's 70th week. It's like, so? He says they're going to get raptured. He doesn't say you're going to be going through the shit and then you'll get raptured in the middle of it before things really get bad. He's saying, no, take great joy that one day you're just going to be taken, whether you're dead or alive, and your loved ones, they'll be taken too, and assuming they believe the gospel and are born again, they're taken too. They'll be raised from the dead. He doesn't say, oh, don't worry, the Antichrist will show up and famine and all this distress is going to come upon the world and you're going to be martyred. And then those of you that are alive and remain will be caught up with the rest of everybody else. That's a better argument showing a pre-tribulation rapture than this guy's view. This guy's view is kind of silly using that argument. Paul is the apostle to the Gentiles. You're going to be gone. He's like, it doesn't matter what happens after, right? It really doesn't. It's kind of like dealing with Noah, telling him to build an ark, and then telling him about Jezebel. Like, why? I mean, if God wanted him to have that information, okay, but I mean, it's kind of not applicable, not needed, right? So, yeah, the fact that he doesn't say you'll have to go through it before the rapture shows pre-trib. The fact that he doesn't say you're going to be raptured to escape it doesn't prove this guy's point of view, because if it did, he would have mentioned what I said before. Just saying it in different ways so that it, sink in there. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to make this video, encourage you, support what's going on right now. These things are happening. They're getting ready. And these people are actually putting a lot of fear in you, telling you to stock up. And you could do that, whether you want to stock up for yourself because you think you're going to go through it, or for family and friends. But ultimately, it don't really matter, because whoever gets it, right? Like if you're taken and the stuff's left, whoever finds it gets it. And if we go through the mess, well, whoever got more people, got more weapons, and is willing to rough people up and kill them to take what they want, they'll get it. So, yeah, unless you got yourself an army and the armament to fend off people, quite potentially you'll have to actually deal with the government. They'll have the military come and just be taking supplies so that you have to go through them. Definitely forcing you to have to take the mark if you want the food from them that they took from you. So, yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, you're trying to save the flesh. If I'm wrong, I know I'm not, but let's just pretend, just just to entertain this. I don't plan on trying to live. I'm just gonna go up. I'm gonna flip them off. Say praise Jesus. Let's do this, and go up there with a smile on my face, singing something like "Run if you want to, run if you will, but I came here to stay." And let my whole head roll off, and hopefully that encourages others to do the same thing. So yeah, that's my plan. But these people, for some reason, want to live and survive through it. Okay, have fun with that. Uh, Me, I'm waiting for the rapture. I know it's coming, but my second option, death, as quick as I can go home. So with that being said, thanks for watching and take care.